Number 10. Distant Fires. In the world of the one-shot comic Superman Distant Fires, nuclear war has thrown the world into Armageddon, with the resulting radiation actually robbing the superheroes of their powers. The Billy Batson of the story is actually still able to practice transforming into Shazam, but this only works for short periods of time, and each time it happens, it actually damages the Earth. When Superman turns out alive, Billy is a little less than thrilled, as before the war, he was always playing second fiddle to the Super Boy Scout. His feelings of resentment intensified to a new level though when Clark Kent and Wonder Woman fall in love, as Billy had the hots for her. This drives him to the dark side, and he joins the side of the evil mutants, even taking pleasure in killing Wonder Woman. This enrages Superman, and the two battle on top of a volcano. After his own power betrays him, Shazam is struck down by his own lightning bolt, and Superman throws him in the volcano. Nasty way to go. Number 9. Injustice Shazam. In the Injustice storyline, young Billy Batson is somewhat persuaded and bullied to be part of Superman's new regime. After several not so great decisions from Superman, including his killing of Lex Luthor that Billy aided in, Shazam turns against Superman when he decides to plan to destroy Metropolis and Gotham, as well as invade the duplicate dimension as revenge for interfering in his plans. He stands up to the super dictator, but when he mentions Lois's name, Superman goes off the handle, grabbing Shazam by the throat, freezing his mouth shut, and burning his brain through his eyes with his heat vision. Yikes! His death led the Flash and Green Lanterns to join Batman's side at least. Number 8. Just Imagine Shazam was named Robert Rogers. And instead of turning into a handsome black-haired hunk, when Rogers yelled Shazam, he turned into a big pink demon. He gets a magical power boost, demon wings, super strength and durability, and a lovely bone necklace. Unlike being powered by the wizard Shazam, he's actually powered by the wizard Merlin of King Arthur legend, and tasked with defeating Morgan Le Fay, which is kinda cool. Fun fact, this story was actually written by Marvel's Stan Lee. Excelsior!
Okay, at number 7, Feral Man of Steel. This isn't really a version of Superman that is fundamentally changed into a monster. He's still a man, and he's still Superman, except he's been raised by a pack of wolves in the jungle. In Superman Annual number 6, a DC Comics Elseworld special tells the story of Kal-El, it's spelled K-L-L this time, a version of Kal-El where his ship actually crashes deep in the Indian jungle. There he's adopted by Mirar. It's just M, R, and R. Basically she's a she-wolf and she raises Superman as one of her own. But of course this leaves this version of Superman as a silent type. A wolf man who is on the verge of being entirely feral. However, deep down, the good values of the Superman we all know are demonstrated when he actually spares the life of an adventurer who kills his wolf mother and one of her cubs. Basically, feral Superman is integrated into human civilization and given the name of Clark, continuing on as a version of Superman closer to the one we're used to.
Number 6. Kingdom Come Shazam. In an alternate possible future, metahumans or superheroes are now hated. Because of this, Billy Batson hasn't become Shazam in years, and is now full grown, looking a lot like his alter ego, minus the cool costume and cape and powers and stuff. He was eventually brainwashed by Lex Luthor into believing that metahumans and even the Captain Marvel inside him are all monsters. In time, Bruce Wayne tries to convince Billy otherwise, which eventually forces him to turn into Shazam once more, breaking open the metahuman prison and starting a massive war that puts the whole world at risk. After a nuclear bomb was dropped, threatening to kill thousands, Superman convinced Billy to help, and Shazam outraced Superman to the bomb, using his lightning to destroy it, sacrificing himself to save both humans and metahumans, ending the hatred against superheroes once and for all. Number 5, Injustice League. Okay, so we have the Crime Syndicate of America, but there was also a team of villains put together to fight that team of villains. So, sort of technically making these villains heroes, but also not really because they're still villains. Right? The important information here is that the Injustice League, at least the one I'm referring to, was formed to combat the Crime Syndicate of America from Earth 3. The team's villainous members included BIZARRO, Black Manta, Black Adam, Catwoman, Deathstroke, Sinestro or Parallax, Captain Cold, and they were formed and led by Lex Luthor. The team first appeared in Forever Evil #3 in January of 2014 when the Crime Syndicate of America invaded the Prime Earth universe and tried, and very nearly did, take over the world. Number 4. The Shazam Who Laughs. After the Batman Who Laughs infected Shazam/Billy with a dark metal virus, turning him into a Joker-like version of himself, he is tasked with infecting Superman with the same Joker dark metal virus. Shazam goes to the Batcave and waits for Superman to show up so he can attack. Joker Shazam is easily a match for Superman and Batman one-on-one, but with the two teaming up, he is a little overwhelmed and retreats, which is odd because going by King Shazam, he takes on the Titan Atlas trying to test his new abilities and even defeats multiple gods. When he is in a fight with Ares, he even defeats and infects Lady Shazam. So doesn't really check that Batman and Superman give him that much trouble, but whatever. Luckily, he is cured thanks to Lex Luthor cutting off the source of the dark metal. But this guy was nuts and showed no signs of stopping, and that smile? It's just creepy, man. Whoa, slow it down there, friend. I see you're enjoying this video. Well, I hope you are. And if you are, that means you're gonna give it a like. Right? In all seriousness, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for giving us so much support. Okay, on to the top 3.
At number 3, we have Super Demon, or Etrigan. This demonic version of the Man of Steel is known as one of the many Supermen of the Dark Multiverse. His origin begins when he's rocketed to an Earth of eternal twilight from a dark planet called Camelot. Luckily, this thing still fights against evil despite his monstrous appearance. At one point, he faces off against Vampire Ultraman, who I previously mentioned on the list, and he's eventually targeted by Prophecy, who wants to steal Etrigan's powers from him. But he's able to escape with the help of Justice Incarnate and goes off to try and free the other Supermen in the Dark Multiverse. This guy has basically every power that Superman has except augmented just a little bit, and often calling on fire as the element of choice. He's got fire breath, hellfire vision, and when he recites a magical verse, is able to unleash what is only described as a burst of hellfire upon his enemies.
Number 2. Lord Marvel. When the Wizard Shazam dies, Billy Batson takes on the role of Wizard of Shazam, becoming the caretaker of the Rock of Eternity. He looks very similar, but way cooler with all the red of his costume becoming white and giving him long white hair. In taking his place, this makes Billy equal in power to the Wizard of Shazam, meaning he can drain gods of their power and basically cannot die. The Wizard was even able to stalemate with the Spectre, who is the embodiment of God's vengeance. I think this is easily the strongest version of the character, but if we don't see that power being used, it's kinda hard to say. Number 1. God of Gods Shazam. During the Darkseid War event, after Darkseid is defeated, the pantheon of gods who give Shazam his powers is revamped. He gains new godfathers. But these guys are all really doubtful of Billy being able to harness their power effectively. But when presented with a new foe, Billy proves them all wrong. This new Shazam is able to defeat Yuga Khan, who is the father of Darkseid. While most of his powers are the same, he gains boldness, the ability to manipulate the powers of the Source, and the ability to manipulate the fires of Hrongmir. He also gains the power of the new Wizard of Shazam and Yuga Khan himself, who it is revealed is one of the new gods. All this matched with the creativity and ingenuity of being human.
Alright, at number 10 we have the very silly but nonetheless evil Super Enemies. In the 1970s animated TV show Super Friends, there's an episode in 1979 called Universe of Evil, where Superman travels to an alternate universe to meet the evil counterparts to the Super Friends, very creatively named the Super Enemies. And the team is made up of all those bad guys we've all known so well and grown up with. You know, like Aquaman with an eye patch, and tinted red Batman, and oh, who could forget the iconic alien monkey Gleek. What a trailblazing team of supervillains they were. But as much as I roast them, they do actually pose a decent threat to Superman in this storyline, to the point where they team up with the military armed with kryptonite weapons, and even bring in their own version of Superman, giving our Superman a good old run for his money. But luckily, Superman Prime finds something called an antimatter flask, which turns all the super enemies back to being good again. Thank God, Aquaman retires that eye patch and is no longer so intensely menacing looking. What a relief.
Number 9. Justice League of Assassins. Unfortunately, this evil Justice League didn't stick around too long. Being first introduced in Superman Volume 4, number 15 in March 2017, the Justice League of Assassins on Earth 14 were a group of augmented, mostly non-superpowered soldiers led by the obviously powerful Superman. The team was made up of Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Batman, Harley Quinn, and Green Lantern. With the exception of Superman, their powers relied mainly on weapons and technology, but primarily they used advanced firearms. Ultimately, they were all slaughtered, with this Superman being kidnapped by Prophecy, which is a shame, because this team looked super cool and they seemed to inhabit a pretty dark and grim looking post-apocalypse. Could have been very interesting.
At number 8, we have the Conglomerate. This group is basically a bizarro version of the Justice League created by Booster Gold. The group is formed after Booster's departure from the Justice League International due to a lack of respect from his peers. When Booster first fails to bring together a competent group of heroes to form the first iteration of the Conglomerate, someone named Claire Montgomery comes in to manage the group. With her, she brings along the likes of Deadeye, an alternate Green Arrow, Fiero, a guy with fire powers, Frostbite, an ice power guy, Elastaman, a stretchy man, Element Man, much like Metamorpho, Scarab, a knockoff of Blue Beetle, and Slipstream, a dollar store Flash. When they engage in a small friendly skirmish with the Justice League International, the fight quickly turns serious, and everyone learns at once that these new members have actually been brought from an antimatter world called Quard, and they're basically just entirely evil, and always had been. Luckily, the JLI take them down, but it's a close one.
Number 7. Captain Thunder. It's kind of confusing because there are so many versions of Shazam who use this name. Basically, Captain Thunder was William Fawcett, a kid who was given powers similar to Captain Marvel. He received his powers when the shaman Maroki gifted William a belt with a thunderbolt symbol that, when rubbed in combo with the magical word thunder, turns him into Captain Thunder. Unfortunately, after fighting the Monster League of Evil, they gave him an evil persona instead of a heroic one. So, when Captain Thunder first appeared in Superman 276 in 1974, he was helping robbers instead of fighting them. It's only after Superman urges Thunder to use his wisdom to fix what happened and to make him go back to his own Earth. There was a much cooler version of Captain Thunder in the Flashpoint timeline with a sweet battle tiger, who you'd probably think of when I say Captain Thunder.
Alright, at number 6 we have the Justice Lords. Appearing in the animated series Justice League in the episode titled A Better World, this evil team is led by a radicalized Superman. Radicalized because he witnesses Lex Luthor murder the Flash and threaten nuclear war. So, Superman decides he'd abandon the typical hero's code of conduct and kill the bald tyrant himself. And in this alternate universe, Lex Luthor isn't just some super rich supervillain working away in hiding, he's actually worked his way to becoming the President of the United States. So, after his death, there is a power vacuum to be filled. And who would be better rulers than this evil alternate Justice League? No one. They didn't think so anyway, so they take over and put in place a totalitarian government with the justification being that they are protecting humanity from itself. And they start calling themselves the Justice Lords, which, I mean, you should sort of know you're the bad guys when the word Lord is in your title. Luckily, the real Superman is able to catch on and take them out of power before anything goes too far. At number 5, we've got BIZARRO. The first time the world sees BIZARRO is in Superboy issue number 68 in October 1958. BIZARRO is created when Superman is hit with a duplicate ray, and what is left is a gray-skinned, opposite version of Superman. Originally from Hertre, that's Earth backwards, yes, BIZARRO and other subsequent hero opposites are under the impression that good deeds are actually against the law. But in a newer interpretation of BIZARRO, he's not much of a threat to Superman, or anyone else for that matter. In the 2017 publication, he's known as sort of a goofy monstrosity that even Clark Kent isn't concerned about. The S on his chest is backwards, he has a little chupacabra as a pet named Colin, and he has horrendous grammar. If you tell him to go right, he'll go lefty ways, and if you ask him to stop, he'll go start. Basically, everyone around him sees him as a big handful and not much more, which is good, because he's still a powerful being from another planet. At number 4, we have the Injustice Syndicate. I know, lots of groups with Syndicate and Injustice in their names. Well, that's because this evil version of the Justice League actually exists as a sort of combination between the Injustice League and the Crime Syndicate, both of which are included in this list respectively. Appearing in Batman the Brave and the Bold, in the episode called Deep Cover for Batman, Batman manages to travel to their evil dimension and infiltrate their operations disguised as Owlman. He sees that this group comprises of an evil version of himself, along with other evil alternate versions of other heroes he knows and works with. While eavesdropping, Batman learns of their plans to, destroy other universes entirely, which of course, he feels is something he needs to put a stop to. And it can't wait, naturally. So he decides to take all of them on himself, and because he's Batman, and it is his TV show after all, he wins. Those universes can thank him later.
Number 3. Mazaz, Alexander Luthor Sr., Earth 3. On Earth 3, Alexander Luthor is the Crime Syndicate's, which is an evil Justice League's, greatest enemy, and the strongest hero on this Earth. He has the ability to absorb other heroes' powers, and after killing this universe's Will Batson, he is basically the twisted version of Shazam, Mazaz, which is Shazam backwards. Take the powers of Shazam, and then add the abilities of anyone he kills. He's pretty powerful. After he kills the Crime Syndicate speedster, Johnny Quick, he absorbs his powers, then goes on to knock out Ultraman, this Earth's Superman. He then kills Deathstorm and absorbs his nuclear powers as well. Unfortunately, the magical word Mazaz works with any version of Alexander Luthor. So Prime Earth's Lex Luthor is able to defeat him using the word, turning Mazaz back into Alexander, which is when Lex kills him with a knife.
At number 2, I'm putting the Injustice League from the video game Injustice: Gods Among Us. Most of us already know how this story goes, but in case you don't, this is one of the cooler and more well-written storylines about an evil alternate version of the Justice League. In most cases on this list, these evil groups are created by an alternate reality, which is always fun but pretty simple to come up with. But this storyline shows a radicalized Superman leading the Justice League to the dark side. And like I said, this isn't because he's an evil version of Superman or one that's possessed by some evil force. He's genuinely turned to evil after the Joker tricks him into killing Lois Lane. So to combat this new unexpected evil force, Batman decides to bring in other members from the Justice League from another universe, and the result is some pretty great fighting gameplay. And right as the game was being released, a comic book series of the same name was also being released in tandem, serving as a prequel to the game, where you can derive general story points from the game itself. Most of the backstory I just explained actually comes from the comics. It's cool to see the video game and comic book worlds working in tandem, and they make a pretty cool new storyline that I figure has to be ranked pretty high on this list.
Number 1. The Crime Syndicate of America. The Crime Syndicate of America hails from the strength-obsessed Earth 3, and is a twisted, evil version of many characters who make up the main universe Justice League of America. Its members include Ultraman in place of Superman, Thomas Wayne Jr., aka Owlman, and Alfred Pennyworth as the Outsider, Superwoman, who was Lois Lane at one point and Donna Troy at another, the cowardly Harold Jordan and vengeful John Stewart, who are both Power Ring, which are evil Green Lanterns at different times, John Allen and John Chambers separately also as Johnny Quick, Atomica, Sea King, Deathstorm, Grid, and John Johns. They come into contact with the main universe many times, and they almost always spell out bad news, as you'd expect from the antithesis to the Justice League of America.
At number 10, we have Vampire Ultraman. This is a double alternate of Superman because he's already Ultraman, who's considered to be a dark, evil version of the hero we all know and love, but after Batman turns Ultraman into a vampire, the character just delves that much deeper into the uncanny. As if a Superman alternative gone bad isn't enough to handle on its own, this guy has a thirst for blood and takes every chance he can get to recruit more superpowered beings into his Justice League of Vampires. This is a perfect example of how messy, but also really fun, things can get when the multiverse gets involved. I think it's fair to say that Earth 43 is not a place I'd like to visit anytime soon. Okay, at number 9 we have Parallax Superman. Parallax is an evil entity that lives in the Yellow Lantern's central power battery, and he is described as the living embodiment of fear. Basically, this insect-like creature is something of a parasite that takes over a number of hosts throughout various storylines in the comics. One of those times, he takes over Superman, and the combination of these two beings naturally creates a very evil and powerful monster. And what makes it even crazier is that the origin of Parallax Superman came about by Superman's own will. In defense of a group of helpless schoolchildren, classic, Superman decides to give in to the evil parasite and allow it to steal his essence. The only way Superman is able to yield Parallax from his body is by shedding all his fears and, using Sinestre's ring, capturing and banishing Parallax forever. Phew. At number 8, we've got Vampire Superman from World's Finest, issue number 249. This version of the hero only appears for a short time in this one issue when Batman and Phantom Stranger are out at sea on a ship with a small crew. What appears to be going on is a Vampire Superman trying to turn the crewmates into fellow vampires themselves. So when Batman shines a light on Vampire Superman, sending him inside and into a coma. I don't really get why this happens, but basically Batman then attempts to drive a stake into Superman's heart, as one does if they're trying to kill a vampire. But Phantom Stranger stops him and turns the stake on the crewmates, who he reveals as being the real culprits. And for some strange, complicated reason, Superman then comes to and the crewmates are defeated and turned to coral? I don't know. This story was hard to follow, but for a time there, Superman fell victim to vampirism. And this is a scary moment because besides kryptonite, many people aren't aware that another of his weaknesses is magical enchantment, including vampirism and werewolfism. Is that the right term? Werewolfism?
Number 7, Squadron Sinister. This isn't so much an evil alternate Justice League as this team actually appears in the Marvel universe. But I'm gonna count it because I'm just stubborn like that. The original Squadron Sinister was created as a sort of obvious play on DC Comics Justice League characters Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, and The Flash, with the characters Hyperion, Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, and the hilariously named Wizard, respectively. The team was created by the Grand Master after he encountered the Squadron Supreme, and they first appeared in Avengers number 69 when they were pitted against the Avengers in a game between the Grand Master and Kang the Conqueror. They're bad guys who are counterparts to 4 members of the Justice League. I gotta stop justifying my reasons. They're on the list. Argue with me down below if you don't like it.
At number 6, we've got Werewolf Superman. In Superman Volume 1, issue 422, we see a cover that makes us jump for a second, thinking that our beloved Clark Kent has been overtaken by a werewolf curse. But no, this isn't actually Superman turned werewolf. What it is, though, is a werewolf who takes Superman's costume off of him and wears it. He wears it around for a while. So, for a moment, we get a pretty crazy visual of a drooling, feral wolf man wearing the Superman suit. And we're also left with another visual of a totally naked Clark Kent lying defeated on the floor, but that's neither here nor there. What's crazy about this encounter is that this werewolf actually takes out Superman, knocking him down for long enough that he's actually able to steal the costume, forcing Superman to throw on a pretty sweet one-piece tracksuit and fly somewhere that he can properly change back into his Clark clothes. Later, he finds the culprits of the werewolf serum and then takes them all out naturally, without getting bitten himself, luckily.
Number 5, Earth 5 SHAZAM. Earth 5 is a simpler, kinder world. A world that is more optimistic. A world where the heroes are seen as such with hardly any faults. Basically, this is the golden age of comics. Specifically, Fawcett Comics. See here, Captain Marvel is the main superhero, which gives the world the name Thunderworld. He and his family, Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, keep the world safe from everything from the Monster Society to aliens. This version of SHAZAM worked together alongside Superman and Overman to recruit the Supermen of the universe. They worked together, led by Captain Marvel, to defeat Ultraman and weaken Mandrake, who was killed by the Green Lanterns.
At number 4 is the Superman Monster. This is a classic mashup story, basically marrying Superman and Frankenstein into one. A guy named Victor Luther comes across an alien spacecraft with the remains of a baby boy within it. When he realizes that the child was supposed to have arrived in intact, he devises a plan to revive the being using the body parts of dead bodies found in a local graveyard. Using the advanced alien technology from the ship, Luthor creates a revival matrix and brings this monstrous version of Superman to life. But just like the classic story goes, the resulting creature doesn't quite turn out the way that Luthor had planned. He's a little grayer and more decayed than he'd like, so Luthor rejects him, and gets pretty badly injured in the process. The rest of the story is basically more parallels to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, so if you're interested in hearing about the story of Superman and Frankenstein mashed together, go check out the story. It's a one-off, so it probably wouldn't take very long to read.
Number 3. The Joker League. In Emperor Joker #1 of October 2000, the Joker has gained 99.99% of the reality warping powers of the 5th dimensional being, Mr. Mxyzptlk, and he used them to completely warp the world into an insane offshoot of our real world. In this Joker world, he has put together an evil, insane version of the Justice League called the Joker League of Anarchy. The team members include some characters we've seen before, such as BIZARRO #1, Enigma, who's the Riddler, Gravedigger Lad, who is actually Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy. He has also created completely new characters that are wholly original to this story: Ignition, Bounty, Schism, and Scorched. He even has Lex Luthor as a jester. They are basically just the henchmen of this already pretty much all-powerful version of the Joker. Just another way of keeping him entertained, it seems.
At number 2 is Sand Superman. This entity is neither human or Kryptonian alien, but a mixture of energy from Quarm, sand from Earth, and some of Superman's powers that have been siphoned out of him. This creation is not quite a monster, but it is an uncanny recreation of the hero that honestly kind of creeps me out. Almost as much as a zombie or vampire version of Superman might. It doesn't have any soul inside of it, and for a time is set on draining even more of Superman's powers from him. Although it does come around and start to act more like Superman does, acting as a selfless superhero fighting crime and all that. It still poses a threat to Superman, and the rest of the world for that matter, because due to this creature being composed of alternately charged atoms to Superman, and only gains power when Superman loses it, and vice versa, it's known that if Sand Superman comes in contact with real Superman, there would be a devastating explosion powerful enough to destroy the planet. So yeah, Sand Superman, not to be messed with. And kinda creepy, honestly. Okay, we're at number 1, and I have to put Blackest Night Superman here. 2 words: Zombie Superman. This version of Superman comes back from the dead and terrorizes Smallville with the added powers of a Black Lantern. In the comics, he's able to read people's fear and their power levels with what seems like a built-in HUD system. He's just a predator in all senses of the word. But when they face off, Zombie Superman is able to see more human emotions in Superman than he had in the people of Smallville. Fear, love, hope, will, and on top of it all, this zombie Superman uses Superman's own mother against him, putting her life in peril, and even Clark's dog, which is where I personally draw the line. Thank God he and Superboy put an end to this undead nightmare at the end of the series. The pup also gets some blows in, which is a great little touch.